Hey guys, Dr. Bodle here. And something that I hear a lot of from other practitioners in the thyroid space is that they can help you to cure your Hashimoto's. Well, are they right? Now, of course, I can't speak to every practitioner out there, but my hope is that they're slightly misinformed and they're not trying to be intentionally misleading. Hashimoto's and other autoimmune conditions cannot be cured. And although it can be scary to hear that, it's important that we understand the reality. That way we can actually take proactive steps to help you feel and function better. So when I said that I hope that those other practitioners were misinformed rather than misleading, here's what I meant by that, and here's how we should actually approach things. When it comes to Hashimoto's, most of the diagnosis, and therefore most of the management, focuses on antibody levels. If TPO antibodies and or TG antibodies are elevated above the lab range, then we know that some sort of autoimmune activity is present. So I think it's only natural that if an individual notices that a particular marker is diagnostic for a disease or the hallmark of a particular disease, then it makes sense that we would want to manage that marker. It would be like having elevated blood glucose and being diagnosed with diabetes. Well, if we don't want to have diabetes anymore, then we need to manage the blood glucose levels and try to get them back into the normal range. This is where I think people are referring to curing Hashimoto's. If you have positive antibodies, then those antibodies are lowered to the point where they're no longer detectable as abnormal on the labs. Then for some people, in their mind, that might be evidence of a cure. But even though I just used the example of lowering our blood sugar, the important thing here is recognizing that antibodies don't behave like all of our other lab markers. First off, antibodies are only one part of a larger coordinated immune response, all of which plays a role in autoimmunity. And although higher TPO antibodies, especially those above 500, tend to correlate with the likelihood of increased progression towards worsening hypothyroidism, the connection isn't always as direct as we might think. This is why one person who might have TPO antibodies of 40, which is high when we compare it to the lab range, could be extremely symptomatic and barely functional, while someone else whose TPO antibodies could be 600, and that's an amount that I think a lot of us would give us cause for concern, could certainly have symptoms present, but they might be much more mild than the person with TPO antibodies at 40. Now, this doesn't make much sense if we were to only think about antibodies as being the defining factor for Hashimoto's severity, but like I just said, they're only one part of the response. And how we feel and what our other thyroid markers look like can be heavily influenced by those other steps in the immune response. So although it can be a good strategy to try to get your antibodies lower, and I think that will happen if you plug in the right pieces and give your body the right kind of support, getting antibodies into the quote-unquote normal range isn't the be-all end-all. And this leads us to our second reason for why we need to be careful using the term cure, which is whether or not your antibodies have dropped into that normal range ignores the fact that your immune system has memory. So imagine this scenario for a second. Let's take an individual who is in their 20s and they have a few mild health problems with a family history of hypothyroidism. They've been told by their doctors on and off over the years that they have anemia. When they get really stressed out at work, they find that it's harder for them to think and their energy gets worse. And they've always had some fairly significant PMS. While these symptoms weren't great, they were tolerable and the person was able to deal with them. But after having 2 kids, their hormones shifted, their immune system wasn't functioning properly, and it was enough of a push that after their second child, they developed Hashimoto's. Initially, their TPO antibodies were measured at 250 and their TG antibodies were 10. Both lab high, and all those symptoms that we mentioned before were dramatically increased. Eventually, this person decided to take matters into their own hands. They dramatically changed what they were eating, they made sure that their sleep was consistent, and they took active steps to manage their stress. Additionally, they got some help from their doctor and received iron infusions to address that underlying anemia which had never been fixed before. After 3 years of not perfect, but steady work, their lab panels finally showed normal thyroid markers and that their antibodies were within the normal range. So as we said earlier in the video, does this mean that this person is now cured? Well, For a lot of reasons that are very helpful and protective to us, our immune system has memory. Well, most of the time, that memory is involved in exposure to different types of infections. When we're exposed once, the next time that infectious agent comes around, our body is now ready for it. This allows us to respond more quickly and reduce any potential harm that that pathogen might cause. Unfortunately, when it comes to autoimmunity, our immune system also has memory. And although this particular individual might not be having another pregnancy, the thing that really tipped off their immune system in the first place, all of those other contributing factors, the things that set the stage for autoimmunity to become active, if that person then goes back and starts to re-engage some of those triggers, then it is highly likely that our immune system is going to become irritated, it is going to become activated, and we'll see those antibodies start to climb once again. But remember what I just said. Antibodies aren't the whole picture. And I've seen many patients before who are doing very well, their antibodies are very stable, but maybe they catch a bad cold and we happen to be testing around that same time. It's possible that that virus causes enough of an immune system reaction that we actually see their thyroid antibodies increase. But does that mean that they all of a sudden now have all of their thyroid symptoms back? No, not necessarily. If the system is resilient enough, if it's dynamic enough and it's healed enough, then even though those antibodies might increase, we likely won't see a huge change in our other thyroid markers, nor will we notice an increase in symptoms. However, if we continue to irritate and trigger our immune system week after week, month after month, and year after year, then yes, eventually that increase in antibodies and the associated immune system dysfunction will likely lead to the return of symptoms. And that's because the memory that the immune system has associated with the onset of your autoimmune condition is still present even years later when enough of those triggers present themselves. So, do I think Hashimoto's can be cured? No. But the example I just used is a great example of what is possible. We might not be able to reverse the disease, and I think whether or not that person has positive antibodies or not is maybe not as important as a lot of people lead us to believe. But we can reverse the symptoms and we can improve your function. To do that, we need to identify our own personal immune triggers, manage them to the best of our ability, and then likely use those supportive strategies for the long term. Key areas that I always look at with my patients includes things like, do you have food sensitivities? Is your blood sugar stable? Do you have any type of gut dysfunction? Do you get regular sleep? Is your stress well managed? Do you have any type of hormonal abnormalities or fluctuations? Does your body struggle with acute or chronic infections? And are you being exposed to any environmental toxins? Some of those things will be under our control, and some of them might not be. But we want to take control of the ones that we can, mitigate the ones that we can't, and make sure that we provide support to any parts of our body or physiology that have been damaged or impaired by long-term autoimmune activity. Sometimes it can be hard to sort out the details for yourself, and every person is going to be a little bit different. But when it comes down to it, we want to reduce and manage those triggers, focus on healing and recovery, and if we do those things, your Hashimoto's might not be cured, but I do believe that you can live a healthy and fulfilling life with the condition present. But I hope that you liked today's video, and as always, if you have any questions, you can leave them for me down below. And if you're enjoying learning about natural strategies to help support your Hashimoto's and hypothyroid symptoms, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for new videos every Thursday. If you enjoyed the video but know that you need more help and you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can start that process by sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com, and once we hear from you, my staff will reach out and set you up with a free consultation. Additionally, in the next few months, I'll be teaching my first live online course to women with Hashimoto's who are frustrated with the lack of help that they're getting from their doctors, are fatigued and exhausted, and want to go to a place where they're energized, strong, and can make confident decisions when it comes to nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle choices. So if that's something that sounds more appealing to you, you can also email contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com and put course in the subject line. Otherwise, if you're looking for more information now, You can check out some of the other videos on the channel. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook for daily tips and strategies, or you can grab either one of my free downloads, which are listed in the description box below. But that's it for this week. Thanks you guys, love you guys, appreciate you watching and hanging out. And if you have any other questions, make sure to reach out to me. But my name is Dr. Brad Bodle. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.